Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Today's lesson is about oxidative phosphorylation. The learning outcome is for student to be able to illustrate, to explain electron transport chain, explain chemiosmosis, proton motive force, explain complete oxidation of one molecule of glucose in active cells to produce 38 ATP. First, we have to understand why we need oxidative phosphorylation. Through substrate-level phosphorylation, which occurs during glycolysis and Krebs cycle, there were only 4 ATP produced per glucose molecule. Meaning, one glucose, we can only produce 4 ATP through glycolysis and Krebs cycle. So most of the energy that extracted from a glucose molecule is actually stored in NADH and also FADH2. So as you have already learned, in glycolysis, we produce NADH, two molecules of NADH. During link reaction, we also produce another two NADH. And in Krebs cycles, we produce another 6 NADH. While FADH2 is formed during Krebs cycles only, which we yield 2 FADH2 from Krebs cycle. So the electrons the energy where we can get the energy is in the NADH and also FADH2. This electron should be transported to the electron transport chain. And then the energy released during electron transport chain will be used to synthesize ATP during chemiosmosis. This is why oxidative phosphorylation are inclusive of electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. They go together. What is oxidative phosphorylation? It is a formation of ATP using energy that is derived from the redox reaction of electron transport chain. So please bear in mind when we use the word redox, means it involves the oxidation and reduction process simultaneously. Looking at this diagram, you need to be able to identify that this is the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. So together, they are called oxidative phosphorylation. This is actually the structure of a plasma membrane. So we know that oxidative phosphorylation occurs in the mitochondria, right? And specifically, the oxidative phosphorylation occurs in the inner membrane here, inner membrane of mitochondria. Includes includes with includes with uh, inclusive ataupun dengan kata lainnya that includes crista, the folded part of the mitochondria, right? Okay, so look at this diagram. This is the parts of electron transport chain. So we have number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So these numbers are labels of the complex in the electron transport chain. So one is an ADH dehydrogenase. So these are all protein. Yes, these are all protein. Number one is an ADH dehydrogenase. While number two, this one is the succinate dehydrogenase. And complex number three is cytochrome C reductase. And complex number four is cytochrome C oxidase. So, um, as you can remember, I've already explained and explained to you about the naming of the enzyme. So, so that you should be able to understand from the name itself, the name of the enzyme, you should be able to know the substrate involved during the process by which this particular enzyme is involved with the NADH dehydrogenase, and you should know what does this enzyme do. So for example, for number one, NADH dehydrogenase. So the substrate is NADH. NADH. So NADH will transfer the electrons that they carry to the protein, to this enzyme. And then dehydrogenase along with the hydrogen ion. So NADH here will release hydrogen molecule. So the hydrogen molecule are made up of electron and proton. So the electron will be passed through the electron transport chain, while the hydrogen will be in the matrix of mitochondria for the time being until their concentration increase. Then we will explain what happened later. So the name of this enzyme shows that this enzyme will dehydrogenate, meaning that they will help in removal of hydrogen from the NADH. So NADH specifically will transfer the electron to the first complex, and then the electron will be passed through the electron transport chain. Okay, look at the succinate dehydrogenase. Complex number 2 here, it receives hydrogen, or it remove hydrogen from succinate. But what does this FADH2 do? So you have to look back at the Krebs cycle. During the Krebs cycle, during the formation of succinate from succinyl CoA, sorry, sorry, from succinate to fumarate, from the conversion of succinate to fumarate involve the oxidation by FAD. So FAD that received the hydrogen converted to FADH or reduced to an FADH, and then the hydrogen is to the transferred to the succinate dehydrogenase. So it means that the Krebs cycle occurs sort of right here, and then while succinate is converted to fumarate, then FADH receive the electron and hydrogen from the succinate, oxidizing the succinate to fumarate. And then the electron will be transported to the succinate dehydrogenase in the electron transport chain. So FADH2 will be oxidized to FAD and then continue with another Krebs cycle. So the electron then will be passed through the series of electron transport chain. Look at complex number 3, cytochrome C reductase. So this is a cytochrome C reductase, meaning the cytochrome here is a component of the electron transport chain that is mobile because it is not an integral protein. So cytochrome C is a mobile transporter. It will receive the electron from complex number 3, then cytochrome C will be reduced. Hence, the name is reductase. So, this enzyme, complex number 3, will reduce the cytochrome C by transferring the electron to the cytochrome C. So, cytochrome C will then pass the electron to the complex number 4. Complex number 4 is cytochrome C oxidase. So it is still about the cytochrome C, but in the sense that when complex number 4 receive electron from cytochrome C, meanings that cytochrome C is oxidized. Sebab tu nama dia cytochrome C oxidase. So nombor 4 ni dia terima elektron daripada cytochrome C. Jadi dia mengoksidakan cytochrome C. Jadi kompleks nombor 4 terima elektron. Lepas tu apa dia buat? Okey, kalau tengok gambar rajah ni, elektron ni akan dipindahkan ke ni oksigen. Okey, nanti kita akan tengok penerangan yang seterusnya. So component of electron transport chain, ingat mesti ada kompleks 1, kompleks 2, kompleks 3 dan kemudian sorry. Kompleks kompleks 2, kompleks 3, kemudian kompleks 4. Right. Dan in between 3 and 4, kompleks number 3 and 4 ada mobile, bukan mobile legend ada mobile carrier. Okay. Sekarang ni, ini kita tahu they are all integral protein, so they will be embedded between the phospholipid bilayer. Except for protein number 2, they are peripheral protein. Okay. Okay. So, remember NADH, the plus H plus, will transfer electron to the first complex. While FADH2 is a prostatic group, so it does not go anywhere. It is attached here. FADH2 transfer electron to the second complex. Why? This is because FAD it has a lower energy level compared to NAD plus. So NADH can transfer electron to the first complex, which has higher energy level than complex number 2. And FAD, which carry less energy, lower energy level, so it will transfer the electron to the second complex. It cannot pass to the first complex. Okay. Now, so NADH, the electron from NADH will pass through the complex number 1, and then this is coenzyme Q, and then pass to coenzyme Q, and then coenzyme Q pass to this one. So 1, 2, and then complex number 3 pass to the cytochrome C, and then pass to the number 4. So 3. Right? 3. Jadi ada 3 kompleks yang akan dilalui oleh NAD, elektron daripada NAD. Elektron daripada NADH. Manakala bagi FADH2, elektron dia daripada kompleks 2 dia terus pergi kepada kompleks 3. Dan kemudian pergi kepada kompleks 4. Seterusnya, fakta yang kedua, ni dah tahu ni kompleks nombor berapa kan? Okay. Since 3 of the complexes are integral protein, they also act as the to act as the channel protein. Okay, channel protein. Channel protein for what molecule? Okay. It is for hydrogen ion. Dipanggil proton pump. Okay. So, ingat tadi saya kata NADH dia transfer hydrogen molecule dan juga elektron. So electron will be passed through the transport chain, electron transport chain, while hydrogen ion will be in the matrix. So many NADH will pass the hydrogen ion, will pass the electron and hydrogen ion. So there are so many hydrogen ion accumulated in the matrix of mitochondria. This will cause an increase of hydrogen ion concentration. So hydrogen ion concentration increase, dia akan menyebabkan kecerunan kepekatan tinggi dari dalam matrix, di luar lebih rendah. So ini adalah intermembrane space. Jadi disebabkan kecerunan kepekatan berlaku, iaitu daripada tinggi di dalam matrix, di intermembrane space dia akan jadi lebih rendah, menyebabkan berlaku passive transport. Hydrogen ion will be pumped into the intermembrane space. Sama juga dengan yang berlaku di kompleks nombor 3. Ni kompleks 3, ni kompleks 4. Okay. Jadi ada 1, 2, 3 pump proton. So NADH, since it transfer the hydrogen, the electron and proton to the first complex, jadi dia punya aliran tenaga tu akan melibatkan ketiga-tiga proton pump. Manakala FADH2 dia hanya melibatkan 2 proton pump sahaja. Sebab tu nampak kat situ dia punya aras tenaga dia berbeza. Sebab tu nanti you akan tengok the equal the amount of energy that can be produced by one molecule of NADH is equal to 3 ATP. While FADH2 is equal to 2 ATP only. Nah, faham? Saya harap awak faham itu fakta tu, nanti penerangan yang seterusnya kita akan tengok. Oxidative phosphorylation, two processes, the electron transport chain, the chemiosmosis. Okay, one NADH produce T3 ATP, one FADH2 produce 2 ATP. Tadi saya dah jelaskan kenapa apa dia punya the reason, the logical explanation. So electron transport chain is a series of electron carrier molecules. They are embedded in inner membrane of mitochondria. They will carry electron from NADH and FADH2 through a series of redox reactions. The purpose is to synthesize ATP. So the purpose of electron transport chain, break a large free energy from glucose into a series of smaller steps through ETC, and then it will release energy in manageable amount. Bayangkan kalau kita tak manage sikit-sikit, macam nak kita hasilkan berapa, sekurang-kurangnya dalam Krebs cycle ada 6 NADH. Satu NADH 3 ATP. So 6 NADH kita akan dapat 18 ATP. 6 kali 3, 18. Jadi 18 ATP tu menunjukkan bahawa tenaga yang boleh kita dapat daripada pecahan glikolisis ni adalah sangat besar. Sorry, daripada glukos ni adalah besar. Even dalam pada masa glikolisis pun kita ada dah 2 ATP terhasil. Sebenarnya 4 ATP, jadi kita guna 2. Kemudian kita hasilkan 2 NADH, kat situ saja dah bermakna 2 kali 3, 6. So dah 6 ATP. Jadi tenaganya besar. Jadi kalau kita terus nak hasilkan ATP, dia akan susah nak di-manage, unmanageable. Jadi bila dipecah-pecah macam ni, dia akan jadi lebih terurus. Hydrogen atom from NADH plus H plus and FADH2 will dissociate into protons and electrons. So the dissociation of these proton and electron occurs in the mitochondrial matrix, and proton release into matrix of mitochondria and then pump into the intermembrane space in the next reaction. Kenapa? Sebab dia dah berkumpul banyak dalam matrix, jadi berlaku peningkatan kepekatan. Kecerunan kepekatan dah wujud. Basic concept of electron transport chain, electron enter ETC and then transported through the ATC. The energy is released during the transfer of electron. Okay, masa dia transfer dari satu kompleks ke satu kompleks, menghasilkan tenaga. Daripada mana datang tenaga? Tenaga yang datang tu masa proton dipump keluar ke ruang antara membran. Jadi nampak tak anak panah ni? Jadi berlaku peningkatan hydrogen ion di ruang antara membran. So the increase of the hydrogen ion in the intermembrane space akan menyebabkan kecerunan kepekatan pula di intermembrane space. Jadi bila dah kecerunan kepekatan berlaku wujud, hydrogen ion concentration increase in the intermembrane space, dia akan mengaruh induce the hydrogen ion to be moved into the matrix balik. Jadi pergerakan hydrogen ion masa dia nak bergerak masuk ke dalam matrix of mitochondria, dia hanya melalui satu laluan saja, iaitu melalui enzim ATP synthase. Ingat tengok ATP synthase bukannya komponen ETC, tapi ia juga adalah protein integral pada plasma membran. Tapi fungsi dia hanya untuk menghasilkan ATP sahaja. Jadi bila hydrogen ion tadi dipam-pam, ada tiga laluan pam proton tadi. Tiga laluan pam proton menyebabkan kepekatan proton di ruang antara membran lebih tinggi. Jadi hydrogen ion ni, ion hidrogen akan bergerak secara pasif masuk ke dalam matriks semula melalui pengangkutan pasif. Jadi tak gunakan tenaga kan. Tapi laluan dia ni, semasa dia lalu ni, ATP synthesis is very special sebab dia mampu menggunakan perjalanan hidrogen ion tu untuk menghasilkan tenaga mengikat fosfat inorganik. Fosfat ni ada dalam matriks, diikat kepada ADP membentuk ATP. Okay, membentuk ATP. Jadi maksudnya kat sini ATP synthase bukannya parts of ETC, tapi dia adalah enzim yang menghasilkan ATP. So ini yang dipanggil chemiosmosis. Sebab apa? Osmosis kan pergerakan pasif air. Tetapi dalam konteks ini kita bukan masukkan air yang bergerak, tetapi yang bergerak adalah bahan kimia proton. Jadi itu yang dipanggil chemiosmosis. So chemiosmosis is the part where the hydrogen ion is pumped into the matrix of mitochondria, and the movement of the hydrogen ion macam hidrolik punya konsep. Jadi pergerakan dia menyebabkan aliran tenaga, penghasilan tenaga berlaku untuk mengikat fosfat inorganik kepada ADP. Jadi membentuk ATP. So you have to memorize the component of electron transport chain. The complex number 1 is NADH dehydrogenase. Number 2, succinate dehydrogenase. Number 3, ubiquinone or coenzyme Q. This is not a complex, tapi dia parts of the electron transport chain. Sebab dia mobile carrier. Ubiquinone adalah mobile carrier. Kompleks yang ketiga ialah Cytochrome C Reductase, kemudian mobile carrier Cytochrome C. Kompleks keempat Cytochrome C Oxidase. And then the last electron acceptor is the oxygen atom. Okay, electron carrier, the component electron carrier will alternate between being oxidized when they lost the electron or being reduced when they accept electron. Electron transfer involves redox reaction, reduction and oxidation. Electron carrier of the chain will be reduced when it accept electron. Jadi kalau tengok gambar daripada Campbell ni, Nampak tak dia tunjukkan ni? Ni dia menunjukkan bahawa kompleks ini mempunyai aras tenaga yang lebih tinggi daripada kompleks 2 dan 2 lebih tinggi daripada kompleks 3. 3 lebih tinggi daripada kompleks 4. Okey? Sebab tu nampak dia downhill.